We are live. Okay. So hopefully we are live in all of our destinations. Good evening, everybody. How are you? Hope you are really well. I'm going to give people a minute or so to find us and to log on, because I know it takes a few minutes sometimes to find where these lives go out, because we've had an event on my business page. So for those of you that are joining us, welcome to this live where Ken, my esteemed guest, who I met very recently, are going to be unlocking the secrets of food addiction. And we have both been on a bit of a journey with this. We're going to share our journeys with you tonight. We're going to share some interesting information that may actually open your eyes a bit tonight. So welcome, say hi. If I can see your comments, I don't know whether I'll be able to see your comments or not, but say hi, let me know you're there. Lovely to have you. So what the plan is tonight is that I will kind of share a bit of my story and talk about the weight loss that I've experienced over the last 10 months and why I decided to take control. I've got a few, hi Barbara, nice to see you. A few statistics for you, and as has Ken, we're sharing quite a lot of stories and data and information that you may or may not know. Ken's also going to tell you how he, towards the end, how he works with predominantly women to help them to deal with their food addiction and their issues with food. But we're not selling anything as such tonight. I'm definitely not selling anything. This is outside of my remit. Ken, obviously, you can work with him on weight loss, but for me, I'm the creative genius consultant and an artist and an author and a creative retreat owner. And I happen to have lost 6 stone, which is 80 pounds now, in the last 10 months. And I have not done it by going on any dodgy diets. So that's why I wanted to share this with you tonight. So my story, those of you that know me, and a lot of you will, because I've been on social media for a long time, and I've shared all of my stories along the way with you, from, starting the business, to buying my dream home, to losing Gary through COVID, to moving to Scotland and buying my mini castle. You've been with me all the time. And over the last 5 years, 4.5 years now, nearly 5 years since Gary died, I have gained on average 2 stone a year, because my go-to comfort is food. And what I discovered last year was that it's not necessarily my fault. In fact, it isn't my fault. So let's start by thinking about, how the world views people that are overweight. Think about how you think about that for a minute. People don't like fat people. They don't like us. I'm sorry, that's a truth. People don't like, they think that because you're fat, you're lazy, you lack willpower, you lack any sort of control in your life, and you are really harshly judged by society. You are then told to just eat less and move more. Yeah, by lots of people who think it's that easy. It's that easy. Eat less and move more. We've got these subliminal messages, can never say that word, happening with us all the time. People don't like us when we're overweight. I mean, I've never found that to be true myself personally. I've never had people hate me. Have I been bullied in the past for my weight? Yes, I have. Have I been picked on? Yes. I have struggled with my weight since I was a child. And there's a reason for that. I was born in the 60s and raised in the 70s. And there's an issue with the food that we were eating throughout those years. A huge issue. Now, Ken's going to dive into that quite deep. So I'm going to touch on it very, very briefly. It kind of started around the mid 70s, where the food that we were eating was being tampered with. And actually, when you start digging into statistics, people say, oh, well, we're eating more now than we were eating then. No, we're not. The statistics tell us that we are not eating more now than we were eating then. We were eating on average about 2,130 calories back in the 70s. And we're eating now, if you add alcohol and sweets to our diet, about 2,590, But if you take the alcohol and sweets out, we're eating 2,280 calories a day. And that's very similar to what we were eating in the 70s. People say that, but there's been a decline in manual labor. People had more manual jobs back in the day. But actually, it's shown that people working in manual labor jobs are 4 times more likely to be classified as morbidly obese than those working in sedentary jobs. That's the statistics. So that's another argument that can be dismissed. What about exercise? We used to exercise more. Well, that's actually been proven to be wrong as well. Children's physical activity is the same as it was 50 years ago, according to Plymouth University studies. It's not that we're doing less. It's not that we're physically doing less. But we buy half as much fresh milk per person, but 5 times more yogurt, 3 times more ice cream, and 39 times as many dairy desserts, because these things weren't available back in the day. We buy half as many eggs as we did in the 70s, but 1/3 more sugary breakfast cereals. Breakfast cereals weren't a thing, and now they are. We buy twice as many cereal snacks. We buy half as many potatoes, but 3 times more crisps. So sugar is the next thing. The opportunities to load our food with sugar have boomed. It's in everything. So we're buying, if you think about some of those foods that we used to buy a lot of, like milk. I remember having milk in the little glass bottles at school when I was a kid. Yeah, they don't do that anymore. So milk and eggs and potatoes, which were staple foods that we used to make food with, good quality food with, we're just not eating them. We're eating the sugary counterparts of those, the processed foods in those food groups, instead of having whole milk. Food companies have invested heavily in designing products that use sugar to bypass our natural appetite control mechanisms. And Ken is going to dive into that a bit, because that scared me when I found out how much the money and time has been put into the food industry bypassing our natural control mechanisms around food and eating. I was really scared. Yet they employ an army of food scientists and psychologists to trick us into eating more than we need. They trick us into eating more than we need. And then we hear this disapproval because we delight in blaming the victims of this. We delight in blaming the people that are fat for being fat. They have no control. It's personal responsibility. They've got no willpower. That's why they're fat. They're lazy. And yet everything that we eat has been bypassed by a group of scientists to make us want to eat more. This is some of the stuff that I discovered last year on the journey to losing weight. So losing weight is never easy. There is no easy way to it. There's an injection you can now have. You can now get the injection. And honestly, whatever you do, you're going to be criticized for it. So whether you go to Slimming World, you're in a corporation that treats you like an idiot and claps every Monday when you lose half a pound or even when you gain a pound. You've got Weight Watchers. All of these companies are part of this food industry scam. They produce their own products, Weight Watcher products and Slimming World products, that are also filled with sugar and other chemicals that are causing you to be addicted to the food and you want to eat more. So there's lots of this stuff that's going on. The things that you think are right to do are never going to be right, because you're going to be criticized for them. You're going to be criticized for being fat. You're going to be criticized for not moving enough. You're going to be criticized for going to Slimming World. You're going to be criticized for taking an injection. You are going to be criticized for everything. So what I wanted to share with you is, there's all sorts, and it's a really noisy place out there, isn't it? You should do fasting, intermittent fasting. You should eat only this many calories. You should be in calorie deficit. You should do all of these things. And here, use our low-fat products our low-fat products that are the worst thing you can possibly eat. And Ken is going to talk to you about that as well. Yeah, it really is quite scary. It's confusing. It's frustrating. And those of us that have struggled with our weight all our lives, and I was a fat kid. I was fat until my teenage years. I lost the weight in my teenage years. I struggled. I gained it. I lost it. I gained it. I lost it. I gained it when I had children. I lost it when I was pregnant because I couldn't eat anything for 6 months. And I gained it again afterwards. And I have had no control in my life. And I am an intelligent woman, a successful business owner. I have been successful in everything in my life and never had control of my eating. And I have blamed myself. There's a self-blame thing that goes on with yourself when you are overweight and you struggle with your weight. You dislike yourself. You think you are weak. Yeah, you think you are weak. You blame yourself. You know that eating food is bad. The food that you're eating is bad. The crisps and the chocolate and the food that you're choosing, you know it's bad for you. You're intelligent, but you can't stop. There's a reason you can't stop, and it's not your fault. And that's what I wanted to come on and do this live about and talk about openly, because the food industry is causing you to be addicted to food. So over the last 10 months, I have lost 80 pounds. And I have done that through a combination of different methods. I started the beginning of last year, thinking I needed to go on a calorie controlled diet, and that I had the willpower this time and I was going to do it. That was it. I was going to do it, and I failed. I lasted a week. Then I crashed and burned and had a takeaway, and I failed. Then I started again, and then I lasted a couple of weeks and I failed again. Yes, I'm menopausal as well. I've just seen Margaret's comment. Menopause comes in and then beats the hell out of you at the end of it all. Yeah, you beats the hell out of you and takes away what little shreds of willpower that you have, because it changes your hormonal balance. So yet again, last year, I tried and failed and tried and failed and tried and failed. And then I started looking into the reasons why I was failing, and looking into the food industry and looking into the foods that I was eating. And I started to eat more whole foods, real foods, and cooking meals from scratch. And that's when the change happened, when I stopped eating low-fat products. Nothing low-fat, none of the processed products that are out there, and started to eat sensibly. And that's what really changed for me, my addiction with food. Have I had help along the way? Yes, I have. I've helped myself by joining online groups, lasted a couple of weeks with them. They were rubbish. It's just been, honestly, what I would say about weight loss is there are no magic pills. There are no secret sauces. There are no magic diets that are going to come along. All the celebrities do all of these current diets, and they are the carnivore diet. I even tried the carnivore diet last year. Yeah, I was constipated after 4 days, and I've never felt so sick of steak in my entire life. Yeah, I tried everything, the carnivore diet, keto, you name it, I have tried it. What's worked for me is eating whole foods, eating a proper home-cooked meal every night from whole foods, from scratch. And me and Dan have figured that out ourselves. And then eating probably for the first time, not until after lunchtime. So you could call it intermittent fasting. I just found that not having breakfast was good for me, for my personal weight loss journey. And I decided to stop counting calories and stop trying to fit into any of the boxes of weight loss. So what do? I don't eat till after lunchtime because I'm not hungry. I've listened to my body and I don't really want to eat until after lunchtime. So I have my first meal then, and I have a proper meal in the evening, which means I'm not hungry in the morning for breakfast. And I found a rhythm that suits my body. And I don't calorie count. I just eat sensibly. So I probably do eat around 12 to 1500 calories a day if you wanted to count it. But I don't purposely go out and say, right, what's in this? I go, what do I want to eat? I know I want to eat beans on toast for my lunch, and for dinner, we're having this, and that's all I want to eat today. And that's working for me. And I eat full fat yogurt, and I eat full fat products and proper butter. I do not eat low fat stuff, but I don't eat it to excess anymore. So I think you've got to find what works for you and your groove, and not everything is going to work for everybody, but listening to your body has been the biggest thing for me in this last 10 months. And I seem to have found a rhythm now that means I no longer feel like a food addict. And that is a big shift for me. So what I want to say to everybody watching tonight, wherever you are with your weight loss, wherever you are with your weight control, with food addiction, it's not your fault. And you need to find what works for you. And I am not going to give you the perfect solution tonight, because the perfect solution that I found was for me. And you've got to find the perfect solution for you. And I think as a coach, this is how I've looked at life in general. As a coach, I did not want to show up and say, I'm an NLP coach, so I'm going to use the NLP modality to coach you. I did 6 coaching qualifications and cherry-picked all the bits that I liked and that I felt that would work with the type of clients I wanted to work with, so that I could become Mandy the coach, not the NLP coach or the life coach or the leadership coach or the other modality coach that I'd learned about. I created my own method, and I've done the same with my weight loss and with my food addiction. I needed to find what worked for Mandy, because my body's different to Ken's, different to yours, and different to other people's. We're all different, and we've all got different triggers. Now, I'm going to attempt to share the screen right now, which could be hilarious, because Ken and I have got some slides to share. So let's see if this one works, and tell me if you can see it. Let me just click on it, that one, and let's see if this works. Okay.
Hey, it worked.
Yes, you can see it. Excellent.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so what you're seeing here is the morbid obesity BMI graph from 1950 to where it's predicted to be. Yeah, and you can see that from the 1960s, there has been a steady income. This is in the US and in the UK, a steady increase in obesity rates. Yeah, if you look, the bold line there is males in the US. The dotted line there is females in the US. So you can see it's much harder for women. And then the females in the UK follows exactly the same pattern. And here, exactly the same pattern. It's actually worse, a lot worse in the US than it is in the UK. Yes, but that's showed the steady increase in obesity. Now, are all of those people included in that graph? Ask yourself this question. Do all of those people have no willpower? And if they don't, where did they lose it? Because at some point they had willpower. Look, in the 1960s and 50s, we did not have that level of obesity that we are heading for now and that we are at now. So do we say that everybody there lost their willpower and their personal autonomy and their ability to actually be in control of their food? I don't think so. So it's not something that is about us being lazy. It's about a global issue. Let me see if I can get the other graph up. Bear with me, because
you're doing better than I have with slides.
Yeah?
Yeah, well, that's you're doing good. Way better.
Right, now it's disappeared, so that's great. That's because I've not minimized it. Okay, don't worry. It's a similar graph anyway.
While Mandy's looking for that, there's a couple things that I want to speak into while she's looking for her slide. Yeah. I'm going to give her some time to do that. So Mandy, what
Mhm.
a what an intro. Like that you packed so much in there, and I'm going to unpack a lot of that stuff today with what I want to talk about. But there are a couple of things that I want to hit on real quickly that aren't necessarily a part of the outline that I have today. And one of them, you mentioned that, what's available out now is now these injections that you can take to lose weight and everything else. And so there's that I want to talk about real quick. And I also want to talk about why it can't be about a diet anymore. And why it should have
Mhm.
never been about a diet to begin with. And
Mhm.
so, Mandy, just let me know when you found your slide, and then I can pause and then let you share your slide.
It's a
Um,
similar slide to. Hang on. There we go. I
okay,
found it. So
she's got it.
I've got it. So it's a very similar slide. It's just showing the age groups, if you can see that. So if you look at the 55 to 64 years women, that's the green line that is at the top of the graph there, the worst. That is the category 55 to 64-year-old women. That's the category where you can see this sharp incline in obesity rates, which indicates menopause. It follows the same trend as all of the other age groups. But if you look, every single age group, 20 to 34 years, has followed the same trajectory and the same graph of increased levels of obesity. The highest point is these 55 to 65 and this 64-year-old women. So menopause does play a big part in the issues that we have as women as well. So I just wanted to share those two things so you can see this is global. It's
Yes,
not our fault. Yeah, it's global. It's not our fault. And Ken's going to talk to you now. I'm going to hand over to Ken because I think it's really important now that we try really hard to talk about why this has happened to us. I've touched on it very briefly because I knew you were going to go in a bit more depth. So, Ken, over to you. Introduce yourself and you just tell me which slides you want and when, and I will be your slide lady.
awesome. Mandy, you set the stage up very, very strongly for all the things that I want to talk about today. You touched on the sugar industry, you touched on the, all the things there, and we're definitely going to unpack some of that today. Before I jump into all of that, there is a few extra things that I wrote down that I just want to touch on real quickly before we dive into, and then I'll share my story and all that stuff. So as I mentioned, it can't be about a diet anymore. And why is that? Well, here's the thing. And there are concepts I love about paleo. There are concepts I love about carnivore. There's concepts that I like about keto. There's concepts that I like about all those, major ones, if you will. And, it's kind of I've done kind of exactly what Mandy did. I've kind of cherry picked. I like that, I like that, I like that, and I've customized something that works for me. And that's the key. There is no one size fits all. But here, if I could get you to picture something with me real quickly, I'm going to share something with you. First of all, I want you to take everything you've ever known about a diet, every list, every restriction, every plan, keto, paleo, carnivore, the Whole30 diet, even the weight loss injections, all of it. I want you to package everything you've ever been taught, everything you know around a diet into a box. And maybe even put a bow on the box if it fancies you. All right. Then I want you to go out to the store. I want you to buy an entire bottle of lighter fluid. I don't want you to just squirt it on the box. I want you to clip the top off of it, and I want you to pour the entire bottle on that box. Soak that freaking thing. Then I want you to take a lighter. I want you to light it into a blaze of glory. That is what gets to happen from this point forward. It cannot be about a diet. But why? Diets do help people lose weight. Indeed, I'll be the first one to admit that. Maddie's lost weight going on a diet. I've lost weight going on a diet. But here's the thing, 95% of the people that have done it that way have gained the weight back, haven't they?
Yep.
5% of us have been able to keep it off for a sustainable amount of time. You want to be that 5%? I'll tell you exactly how. So Mandy said that there is no secret sauce. Well, kind of. But it's not what you think. It's not at all what you think. The secret sauce is simply this. Now I'm going to give you something that's really key, guys. So if you're sitting there, you're listening, you got a pen and paper, write this down. Here's the key. And here's what every diet out there and every diet mindset skips. Your journey to the weight goal that you have must be sustainable for the long haul. See, what diets skip is the inward transformation. Every change, every habit that you adapt into your journey must literally have enough time to sink in and become part of who you are and automatic. That is what's going to produce your lasting changes. Now, I'm not going to go deep into that because that's a whole nother topic. I dive deep into that in my mini boot camp that I have. But I'm just giving you a nutshell there. And what I mean by the long haul is a year or two. You're not asking, hey, can I adapt these new changes over the next, 2 or 3 months and have it be, we're not thinking that way anymore. That's about how long it's going to take for things to sink in.
Mm-hmm.
But I want you thinking an entirely different ball game a year or two out. Why? Because that's how the inward transformation happens. That is exactly what diets rob you of. Is that inward transformation, the mental and, the inward, the heart. That's what needs to transform as you're losing the weight as well. That's what's going to produce your lasting results. That's the secret sauce, you guys. See, I told you it's not exactly what you think it is. It's not really a magic pill because there's definitely a journey that goes with that. You get to embrace the weak moments. You get to embrace the times when you fall off the horse and you go eat a whole cake or whatever that looks like. You get to embrace that, learn from it, grow from it, get stronger from it. This is what diets rob you of. That's why it cannot be about a diet anymore. And weight loss injections, good grief, with what I've just said, that's got to be really obvious now of what weight loss injections are going to rob you of as well. There's so much treasure, gold, and gems in the journey itself if you embrace that journey and make it sustainable. That's what it's about. So with that, I want to dive into my story a little bit. So Mandy, if you can find the first slide, which shows my before and after photo.
I will.
So briefly, I ended up, hey, there we go. Awesome. Yay, it works. I love it. This was, my before and after. So the before was me 13, 14 years ago. I was at the heaviest weight of my life. I had plenty of clothes, but only a few outfits were fitting me. I was popping buttons off of things all the time. In fact, it got to the point to where I actually had to save buttons. So when I popped one off and I lost it, I can easily pull from the saved pile and, hand it over to my mom and say, hey, can you sew this back on for me? It got so bad that every time I went to a conference or a business event and I had to dress up for it, I had to wear my pants unbuttoned and work to have the belt hide that. And I was very self-conscious around that. I was constantly checking. I was constantly adjusting. I could barely bend down to tie my shoes. My belly was so big. The icing on the cake and what brought me to the precipice was I ended up with high blood pressure and I started getting pains on my upper left side near my heart. And if you know anything about when you get pains in that area, you know what that's pointing to. And I knew what that was pointing to. If I continued on the path that I was on, I would have ended up at the heaviest weight of my life. I would have ended up having a heart attack or a stroke. I was at the heaviest weight of my life. So I knew I needed to do something, but going on a diet was not an option. I didn't want to upturn my life. I loved my schedule. I loved what was going on in my life at that time. But I knew I needed to make a change. and going on a diet was not an option. I've been down that road before. I'd lost weight, but I'd always gained it back. And plus, I just did not want to follow a plan. I didn't want to deal with that this time. So, what I wanted to do is I wanted to lose the weight, and I wanted to do it my way. I wanted to have my cake and eat it too. And actually, as a matter of fact, not in a literal sense, but that's exactly what I did. I had my cake and I ate it too. I didn't follow a plan. So I began by making one small change, little tweaks here and there, one change after another, keeping it sustainable for my journey. And fast forward 5.5 years later, you see the after photo right there. I lost 62.5 pounds. And now the key is I've kept it off for 7 years now. How have I done that? Because every change and every habit literally had enough time to sink in, become part of who I was, and automatic through that journey. So when I reached my weight goal, I stayed there because internally there was a change that happened. And so that's the power. That's what you get to embrace now moving forward in your journey. And that's what I teach every one of my clients. I have an entire framework built around the mindset that you take with your weight journey. Now, you can go ahead and stop sharing that. I don't know if you're still sharing. There you go.
Yeah, I know it stopped.
Awesome. Now, summer of 2020, I started doing a lot of deep dive research around a lot of different topics around the time, some of it being geopolitically and all those things. And then I started deep diving down rabbit trails of this food industry, the health industry, and all those things. Many things I found through my research. First of all, I found that we have been deceived and lied to on a massive scale. And some levels of that scale people are still quite unaware of. The more common ones are things like, where we were lied to about the food pyramid. We were lied to about the low fat and fat free scam. We were lied to about red meats. We were lied to about saturated fats. We were lied to about eggs. Those are some of the surfacey ones. We were also lied to around cholesterol, getting deeper. We were lied to about the American Heart Association. Here in America, American Heart Association and their sister associations as well. Did you know that the American Heart Association is 80% funded by pharmaceutical companies? And the rest of their funding comes from big food and the industrial seed oil companies? That's interesting, isn't it? Now, so that's just to kind of give you a little bit of touch. Now I'm going to dive into some of those today, and then some of them I'm not going to be. Like, one of the things that I won't be diving in today is the cholesterol topic. That is an entirely different subject for an entirely different time. And I do cover that at extent in my boot camp as well. But I want to talk about how the food system has been rigged to actually cause food addictions, snacking issues, sugar addictions, hunger issues, emotional eating, and the list goes on. And so now, Mandy, you can share framework number 2.
Yeah.
And so where I want to start here is kind of the basics here. Let's talk about... You got it?
I'm getting it. It's coming.
It's okay. You're doing great. You're doing great. Okay. You know something, you guys, and I get really passionate when I dive into this stuff. So if you hear me like going off like fire, just know that's my passion. This thing was nothing more than an advertisement to send you into a system of industry designed foods created for addiction. That's all. It was never about your health. It was never about a better way of eating, ever. The whole idea, see at the bottom there, you can't see, but it says the starches, the carbs, the cereals and all that. You're supposed to have 6 to 11 servings of those per day. And at the top there, you see that they're minimizing meats. You only get 2 or 3 servings of protein. Any logical person thinking logical and critically is going to look at this and go, that's insane. That's literally a recipe for diabetes and obesity. And that's exactly what it is. But so many bought into it hook, line, and sinker. How? Through mass programming, through the media. You have celebrities that talked about it. You had mainstream news leaders that talked about it. You had commercials that promoted this way of eating in front of your face day after day after day. So mass programming. It was propaganda. This is how they begin seeding a message that they want the public to follow. And this is how it happened. Now, if you can share the next framework.
Mm-hmm. And that'll be number 3.
Number 3. Now, this is what it's supposed to look like. Notice how vibrant and bright those colors are. These are foods that God designed. There's a high priority on proteins, a low priority on carbs, breaks you free from the system, causes the body to begin healing. Foods that literally love you back, right? And foods that promote weight loss, promotes overall health. No boxed or packaged foods here. No ultra processed foods. This is what it's supposed to look like. Look down here at the bottom here, you see where the high priority is on what? Protein, good quality proteins, right? That's what it's supposed to look like. You can go ahead and stop sharing. Now, this system was, like I said, created to literally hook you in to a system that creates addictions. Now, there's the next slide, number 4. Go ahead and share that one.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just closing a few things down.
Not a problem. So while she's finding that, I'm going to dive into this. So back in the 1950s and the early 1960s, the sugar industry actually paid scientists to point the finger at saturated fats and ignore sugar altogether. Countless cherry-picked paid studies came out during those times that demonetized saturated fats and ignored sugar altogether. Here's a quote for you. In the 1960s, the sugar industry paid Harvard scientists to publish a study blaming fat and cholesterol for coronary heart disease, while largely excluding sugar. And the study didn't end there. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, the food industry made a push with continued so-called research to cover up sugar's role in heart disease and poor health, while continuing to point the finger at fat. And then you enter in the later 1980s, 1990s, early 2000s. Most of us were singing that eat low-fat diet for a heart-healthy lifestyle claim, right? End quote. Here's one more quote. The documents show that a trade group called the Sugar Research Foundation, known today as the Sugar Association, paid 3 Harvard scientists the equivalent of about $50,000 to publish a 1967 review of research on sugar, fat, and heart disease. The studies used were reviewed. The studies used in the review were handpicked by the Sugar Group, and the article, which was published in the prestigious New England Journal of Medicine, minimized the link between sugar and heart health, basically for pointing the finger at the role of saturated fat. Now on the screen there, what you saw in the framework that I created is saturated fats and meats are indeed good for you. The lie the industry told you is no, they are bad for you. And so $50,000 for those scientists to be paid off back then, 1967, that was a lot of money. Now, I'm also going to say here that without going into details, the low fat and fat free, all of that, it all was a scam. Red meat is great for you. It's full of a lot of nutrition. But again, these were all lies and deceptions that they fed to us. All right, so if you can pull up slide number 6.
Yep.
And now here's where we go deeper, my friends. This is where it gets crazy. because especially in the particular topic of, yes, that's the correct, yes, good, perfect. Especially on the particular topic of addictions, and then let's talk about emotional eating for a second here. I know that there are plenty of people out there that suffer from emotional eating. And while there's a small part of it that may be a choice that you're making, there's a larger part of this, because the food industry may have just and actually did create the problem of emotional eating in your system. Here's how this works. And then I'll explain this framework that's in front of you real quickly. So, but before I do that, the big food has literally spent millions and billions of dollars on scientific research to put the right amount of certain ingredients in their foods to bring you to that perfect bliss point. Not above, not below, the perfect bliss point. This is what makes their foods taste so good and hooks you into addiction. These ingredients include highly processed sugars, industrial processed seed oils, MSGs, bioengineered ingredients, GMO ingredients, so-called natural ingredients, which is literally a list of 5,000 items or more. Could be any number of those things, and the list goes on. This leads to overconsumption, which drives sales and profits. Companies use advanced food science to create flavors and textures that literally trigger the pleasure centers of your brain, making it hard for consumers to stop eating. Their processed foods literally taste so good because they have designed them that way. They want you coming back for more, but it's not real food. It causes declining health, but it also leads to weight gain and obesity. Now, as you see here, the infinity loop of belief and addiction. So how it works is you start eating these foods, which it then creates a bliss point, which then creates new neural pathways in your head that begin to change your taste buds and your cravings, okay? Which then start messing with your cortisol levels. So those begin to raise. You get like, you get that, the warm fuzzies, if you will. You got the sugar high. You got different things going on, lots of energy. And then you've got the dopamine hits from food. And then eventually you get the crash. And then what happens after the crash? You go back for more, which creates the addiction. This is how it works. This is a very basic framework, on how that happens and how that works. You can go ahead and stop sharing the screen. I'm going to read from another quote here. Thank you, Mandy. That's awesome. Here's the quote. Fast food companies are not the only corporations that are profiting from Americans being overweight. And this is worldwide, not just American. So healthcare companies, hospitals, private facilities, and pharmacies are all profiting as well. By American being overweight, a lot of the health issues come from the types of foods that people are eating and how everyday people's bodies react to them. In the article, The Dangerous Effects of Being Overweight, Claudery states, so now it's a quote inside a quote, did you know that around 20 to 30% of people suffer from cancer due to being overweight? And did you know that the heart disease risk increases with an overweight body? Obesity and abdominal fat are another two risk factors leading to diabetes as well as heart disease. End quote. Now continuing with the original quote. Keeping Americans fat is a huge profit, or keeping the world fat is a huge profit to organizations and corporations such as hospitals and private facilities. People treat these diagnoses by taking medicines that the doctors prescribe, provided by the pharmacies and healthcare companies. And some people are taking an obscene amount of medicines per day in order to control diabetes and cancer. The fast food corporations that promote unhealthy foods are getting people fat, and then they are sent back into the healthcare companies, hospitals, and private facilities and pharmacies to treat, buy, and pay to buy their medicines to fix a problem that these very corporations created themselves. It's an assembly line of profit, end quote.
Mhm.
I think that sums it up quite nicely, don't you think? I mean,
I think
that's
the
go ahead.
assembly line of profit, that sentence, the assembly line of profit, that's what it's about. Even where, I have to say, having been a supermarket manager in my time as well, where food is positioned at eye level for you to purchase, every single step of that process, from decision making to becoming addicted, how they sell it to you, where it's positioned in the supermarket, it's strategic. It is an assembly line.
It very much is. And the marketing deception that's out there is vast and wide. And we're actually going to talk about that in my next section here. So, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, it does. We're going deeper, my friends. Let's go. Let's talk about the cigarette and tobacco companies. Now, some of you out there may just be like, okay, how does that fit in with all of this? What in the world is that? Because there's some people that do know about this, and then there's others that this is still widely unknown what is going on behind the scenes. So let's dive in. The food industry and processed food industry was actually created by the tobacco and cigarette industry. They had a big hand in developing the mainstream food pyramid as well. The cigarette industry back in the 1980s, 1990s bought up the big food companies and then began to turn our food into a science experiment. This goes back to what I shared in the beginning about the food companies spending millions and billions of dollars on top scientific research to put just the right amount of ingredients in their food to bring us to that perfect bliss point. Here's a quote. In the 1980s and the 1990s, a seismic shift occurred within the American food industry, one that remains largely unrecognized but has profound consequences for public health. As cigarette smoking began to decline due to the growing public awareness of its health risks, the major players in the tobacco industry, R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris, sought new avenues for profitability. These companies, facing a declining market for cigarettes, turned their attention to a different but equally insidious industry: food. In the 1980s, these cigarette giants began acquiring food companies. By the 1990s, R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris had become two of the largest food companies in the world. This transition was not just a matter of diversification. It was a seismic shift in focus. These companies brought with them their expertise in making products addictive, a skill honed in through decades of cigarette production, now applied it to food. Still reading from this quote. As cigarette sales declined, the scientists and researchers who had once worked in making cigarettes more addictive were reassigned to the food sector. And their mission was to create food products that people would crave and consume in excessive amounts. This led to the development of and mass production of ultra-processed foods, designed not for nutrition, but for addiction. End quote. Now, in the same way that cigarette companies were maliciously and specifically designed to keep people hooked, these new food products were filled with specific combinations of sugar, salt, and fat, not the good kind of fat either. And they were engineered to hit that bliss point where the brain craves more. Unlike cigarettes, which eventually became regulated and openly identified as harmful, these addictive foods were marketed as healthy and natural, hiding behind deceptive labeling and aggressive advertising. This manipulation has resulted in a society where obesity, diabetes, and heart disease actually run rampant, all while the public is led to believe that they're making healthier choices. I got to pause here and ask the question, does this sound oddly familiar? But go ahead.
So familiar, honestly. Yeah, honestly, we are deceived, aren't we? Completely by low fat, by good gut health, by it's so confusing as a consumer.
It is very confusing. The marketing deception of these companies. Hello, my baby. The marketing deception of these companies goes wide, far, and very, very deep. Look at the way they package stuff on boxes. Hey, it's only 140 calories. Hey, it's high in fiber. Hey, it's got this, it's got that. Look at the vitamins, no synthetic flavors or colorings and all that other stuff, right? And it's literally not until you turn the freaking thing over that you realize the truth. But most people aren't doing that. They're buying into the marketing that's marketing it as healthy. And they're bringing this into their home, feeding it to their kids, thinking that they're making great, healthy decisions. Sadly to say, they're not. These worldly matrix foods are not nutritious for us. They don't do our bodies any kind of good. But when we start turning away from when we start to turn away from that food system and eating foods that God has given us, then we are nourishing our body. It's very interesting and definitely no coincidence that around the same time these big food companies were forming, um, the infamous food pyramid was introduced, pushing what? What did we talk about in the beginning? Pushing high carbohydrate, low fat diet, limit meats, limit this, eat these starches and sugars and all this other stuff. Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds and other tobacco turned food companies had a hand in influencing and manipulating these guidelines so that they ensured that their cheap, ultra processed grain products would become the cornerstone of the American diet, the cornerstone of the world's overall diet. By promoting low fat foods, they effectively demonetize natural fats like those found in animal based foods and steered the public towards the very products that were engineered to be addictive. You guys, this shift in our food system isn't just a public health crisis. I'm going to go as far as to say it's a deep deception. Families are unknowingly feeding their children harmful products. It's not just about the money either. But I am going to say, you want to find out more about this system? Then do just that. Follow the money, because you might make some surprising discoveries. But it isn't just about the money. It is literally about control. Now, I'm not trying to do fear porn here or anything like that. I am just, because in knowing the truth, this is how you get set free. So I am just sharing with you what's really going on. By manipulating our food, these companies have created a cycle of addiction and illness, all while hiding behind deceptive nutritional, so-called quote unquote nutritional science, the government, and government endorsed guidelines. It's time to reveal them for the true architects of modern disease that they are. Yes, I said it that way. They are true architects of modern disease. No one in this corrupt industry is going to make a product that's healthy for you because they cannot make money off of people that are healthy.
No,
You must take
I
matters.
think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. No, it's just
No,
they've spent billions on overriding our willpower, and then they blame us for failing to exercise it. It's
yeah,
this cycle, isn't it? Yeah, they've spent billions on overriding us, and then they blame us.
absolutely, absolutely. And I just have a couple more things to share here, and then we can wrap up. But I just right here, I want to drop this stat, and I'm going to share some other stats in just a couple minutes. But I'm going to drop this right here in this very moment. Did you know that Big Pharma made 1.27 trillion with a T dollars Last year, 2024, this is a current stat, but not a single cent was spent on teaching you how to get healthier. Their priority isn't your health, it's their profit. $1.27 trillion, you guys. Not a single cent was spent on teaching you how to get healthy. Are you beginning to see past it all? The hypnotic spell that maybe some of you out there listening have been under all these years. Are you beginning to see past it now? Are you beginning to see what's really going on? So think about this and think about this as well. In general, people all over the world are sicker than ever and more overweight than ever before. The healthcare costs right now are at an all-time high. Some of you are experiencing the results of that as your medical care continues to rise month after month, year after year. I know my mom's medical insurance has risen quite a few times over the last couple of years. It's not until you begin to start seeing past these lies and deceptions of this industry that are in your face every single day and start making more informed and empowered choices that you're going to be able to then step out of that matrix system that has been keeping you stuck and unable to lose weight and unable to keep the weight off once you've lost it as well. So a couple of things that I want to end with here. So can you show framework number 5?
Yep, certainly can.
Here is the industry timeline, you guys. And why is this so? I can't even get it to pull up on my screen. Here we go. It finally pulled up. So this is huge because this is your process. This is the process on how it happened. If you notice at the bottom there, at the bottom of the scale, back before before 1948, overweight and obesity was below 10%. And then you have all these things that happen along the way. And now we enter into current day, 45+% of the world's population is overweight and obese. And I'll dive further into that, what that actually looks like in reality. But this slide gives you the reality of what has happened through our system and why we're having such a problem today. Okay, and then next slide is number 7.
Mm-hmm.
This is a staggering one that she's going to bring up. I just kind of think this really brings it into reality. So if you look at the 1950s and the 1970s, look at those photos of people at the beach. Now, I just went out there and did a Google search and pulled these photos randomly. These weren't staged. These are real photos. But look at this. This is the 1950s to the 1970s. Then you see in the middle what they sold us on. And now you look at the right, where present day, you can see the difference. These are candid shots. They aren't staged. Look at the people in those after photos in present day. That's staggering.
Scary,
That's
isn't it?
so sad. Yes. It's sad. Now go ahead and share the last slide that I've got. Some of you out there may have seen this before. This is who owns who. Now, the original slide or the original download that I took of this didn't include what I added in the middle, the cigarette and tobacco companies. But that's the truth of the matter. The cigarette and tobacco companies are literally the umbrella of all of these major food companies. But look at who's connected with who. This is how the whole system is connected. That's it. Um, now, I want to give a little bit of hope as we kind of wrap up here. You can go ahead and stop sharing. There are 3 things that you can do right now. 3 things to step out of their system. Are you guys ready? Number 1, turn the freaking thing over. Turn it over. Build that habit. Start learning. I don't care what it is. A supplement bottle, a protein bar, a nutrition bar, dried spices. I don't care what it is. Start learning the habit of turning it over at all times and looking at the ingredients. Number 2, buy things with minimal ingredients and ingredients you can understand. Number 3, better yet, buy things with one single ingredient. What do you mean one single ingredient? How does that happen? Well, here, let me give you an example. A grass-fed bone-in ribeye steak. What's the ingredients in that? 1, meat.
1.
Right? You can't, I mean, come on. So those are 3 simple ways. Now, that pretty much concludes everything I wanted to talk about today. I'm going to hand it back over to Mandy. And then I also want to talk about, as well as, there's something special that I have that is on the table that I'm offering. But anyhow, back to you, Mandy. Any thoughts or aha moments or things you want to expound on?
No, I just, this live came out of a conversation, didn't it, that we had a few weeks ago. We met for the first time a few weeks ago. We've both had a big weight loss. We've both been on a journey trying to understand why we'd been addicted to food. And I think that's what prompted me to share this tonight, because I think we're not sharing this enough. We're not talking enough about why people are struggling so much with the weight, why we have a population that's obese. 61% of English people are overweight or obese. 61% of English people are overweight or obese.
Yes.
That does not mean 61% of English people are stupid or lazy or have no willpower. But 90% of policymakers believe that personal motivation is the reason that people are overweight. They make policies based on us being undermotivated. I know it's quite scary. Some of the, whenever you sort of look on Twitter or Twitter, and you see people talking about weight, some of the comments, like I wrote down some of the comments that I'd seen over the last couple of weeks where people were showing themselves to be overweight. And these are some of them. There are no excuses. Take responsibility for your own lives, people. It's your fault. No one forces you to eat junk food. It's a personal choice. We're not lemmings. This is the shaming that goes on. Sometimes I think having free healthcare in the UK is a mistake. It's everyone's right to be lazy and fat because there's a sense of entitlement about getting fixed. These were comments that were actually made. Yeah. It chimes so loud, doesn't it? We delight in blaming the victims of the food industry.
Oh,
when I discovered this last year and changed the way that I looked at food, that's what changed my eating forever. Whole foods. I can choose a chicken breast. I can choose a steak. I can choose beans as a protein source. And I can choose to add a single ingredient vegetable with them. And those are the choices that I'm making now. And was it easy? No, it was hard. It was hard initially, but it's easy now because I no longer have the addictions. It's like anything. If you're giving up smoking, it's going to take you time to give up that habit and that addiction. If you're giving up drugs, it can be something that you go back to again and again and again. Food is exactly the same. But making good choices.
Yes, making good choice. Continue. Sorry, continue your sentence. I thought you were kind of coming to the end there. Sorry.
Yeah, making good choices for you and what is right
Mm.
for you is going to be the thing that changes you. You said this early on, I think, Ken, and I've been teaching this for a long time. It takes 90 days to ingrain a new habit. It takes 90 days of doing it every single day to adopt a new habit in your life. So you can't give up sugar immediately. It might take you 90 days of cutting back and making one single small choice every day, going from 2 sugars in your tea to 1 sugar in your tea. Making those little choices, you mentioned that at the start, the small changes. We want quick fixes. And what I've done over the last 10 months has not been a quick fix. It's been a slow change of losing 1 to 2 pounds a week of very small changes in my diet. Yes, there's been some weeks I've lost more than that where I've not really felt like eating much. So everything that comes to you is going to come with consistency and breaking the habits that
Yes.
the food industry has created in you. It's never been your fault. It hasn't ever been your fault. It's your
I want to
choice now.
answer I want to answer a question that forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name, my friend. Morna Morrison
Lorna.
asked the
Yeah.
question. So interesting. Can I ask how long did it take you to detox from processed food? So, detoxing from processed food, how that happens is it's probably as you begin to one step at a time step out of the system, one step at a time make changes. It's probably going to be a 2 to 3 month process to where your body begins to heal itself, your taste buds then change, and your body starts to reset. Yes, it can happen, and that's a really good question. I'm really glad that you asked that. But again, as Mandy has already stated here, it's not going to be an overnight thing. You didn't gain the weight overnight. You didn't get here overnight. It was piece by piece, step by step, one thing after another, stacked upon on itself, and then boom! All of a sudden, you realize I need to lose weight. Um, Eventually, what is going to happen is foods that weren't sweet before are going to start tasting sweet, like
Mhm.
cherry tomatoes. Even
Mhm.
cucumbers will start to taste sweet again. Different things like that as your body begins to reset. Now, again, I want to make sure it is 100% clear. It cannot. Notice the way I'm phrasing that. It cannot be a quick overnight process. You must get out of this microwave way of thinking, because that very way of thinking might cause you to lose weight. But if you want to lose weight in a sustainable way, and if you want to be able to keep it off, you must treat it as a journey. You must
Mhm.
treat it as a journey. Now, I forgot to give some stats that I wanted to read, so I'm actually going to go over these real quickly here. These are shocking and staggering stats. 18 million people. Let that number sink in for a minute. 18 million. Okay. 18 million people die every year from coronary heart disease. What do you think that's from? It's from processed foods, processed sugars, industrial oils, most boxed foods, most pre-made food, frozen dinners, most packaged foods, the list goes on. Remember earlier when I gave this stat, 45% of the world's population is either overweight or obese? That's actually, I've been told by a number of people now, that's actually a pretty conservative percentage, because that number also takes into account children that are starving. Um, yeah, that number takes into account some of the countries where they've got children that are starving without food and all this other stuff. So that number is actually higher than 45%. But for now, let's sit at 45% because this is actually still staggering. So now I'm going to put this in perspective for you. 45% of 8.5 billion people in the world is, wait for it, 3 3.82 billion with a B people that are overweight or obese in the world today. Oh, let that sink in. Right? Wow. 3.82 billion? That's almost half of the population. Now, if you calculate in the average raise of 3.5% to 4% each year to those stats, projections are in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to be sitting at 52 to 55 of the world's population being overweight or obese. That's over half the population. Jeez. Now, as I said before, the overweight and obesity issues, they were below 10% before the 1950s. Now, I showed you guys that timeline. You see what's happened? 4 million people die every year from obesity. And that's the last stat I will share. Again, you guys, it cannot be a quick fix. It can't be about a diet. We can't think about that anymore. If you want lasting results, you have to approach it with an entirely different mindset. Go on that journey. Learn from that journey.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you. You've shared some amazing insights with us tonight, which is why I wanted to do this together tonight. This is not what I do for a living. It's just a journey I am on, and I am still on that journey. I will be on that journey. Did either of you have trigger foods that could send me off track? Yeah, mine was completely and utterly sugar, cake, chocolate, sugar. I was completely addicted to sugary foods. And yeah, and that's exactly what you've said, Margaret. It would be sugar, chocolate. If it's in the house, you will find it. Do you know what? I no longer crave chocolate. I have not eaten chocolate for 6 months. And it's not because I've avoided it. I just don't want to have, I've eaten cake in the last 6 months quite regularly. I like a piece of cake. Now I can have a piece of cake instead of lunch because I don't need to have anything else. If I want to treat myself, I'll have that as a meal and I'll enjoy those calories. But chocolate, no longer crave it. And it's weird. I never knew the day that I would stop craving chocolate would come. So yes, and it did take about 3 months for me to stop craving that. I could now eat a couple of squares of dark chocolate. You know, there's skinny people that say I could just eat 2 squares of dark chocolate. And you used to think you're a liar. That can't be true. That's actually me now. I could just eat a couple of squares of dark chocolate if I fancied it, but I haven't even had that. So there you go. I think there's loads that's changed about my eating and loads that's changed about my mindset. And understanding some of these statistics and understanding what's been happening with the food industry in our lives was the starting point for me. The giving myself permission to forgive myself for my behavior for the last 5 decades of my life.
That's so important.
Forgiving myself, yeah. For being for the person that I thought was out of control and had no willpower, because that's what society was telling me. I've forgiven myself for that because it wasn't my fault. I am now in control of that. And that's a shift of mindset, not just a shift of a diet or a method of eating. So I think, Ken does a boot camp. Tell us about your boot camp before we sign off tonight, because I think it would be daft not to tell everybody about it. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. So you guys, there's a lot of things that I go in depth with in the boot camp. You have just gotten some bits and pieces. And honestly, some of these bits and pieces are from my boot camp, to be honest with you. Okay. I'm giving away my 3 secrets to help you break free from those sugar addictions, to help you break free from those snacking issues, to help you break free from the emotional eating, finally lose that last 20 or 30 pounds, keep the weight off, all of that in just 3 phases with me. You will be equipped with an empowered mindset, number 1. an empowered mindset shift. Number 2, you are going to be equipped to see past the industry lies and avoid the common pitfalls. And number 3, lastly, you will be equipped to see past the marketing deceptions of this industry. I touched on that today as well. They package it up, they make you think what you're buying is healthy, and you are out there really trying to make heartfelt decisions and choices, unknowingly buying into that marketing deception. I help break you free of all of that in just 3 phases with me. My boot camp has been valued, not my words. I've shown an insider look at my boot camp to a couple people. One person said it's valued at $1,000. Another person said she would expect to pay $1,500 for my boot camp. My boot camp right now, those 3 phases, is going for $97 for while that price lasts. You've got nothing to lose but those extra pounds, you guys. You've got everything to gain in a very freeing way. Here's one other thing that I'll share. One of the first clients that came through my boot camp, I'll never forget this. On her last session with me towards the end, she said these words, "Now I'm excited to go to the grocery store." And I had to sit back in my chair and go, whoa, I've never heard that come out of anybody's mouth. I don't even like going to the grocery store, and I know all the things. It's the one thing that I put off forever. And until it gets really bad. And then, Lord have mercy, if you're the one in front of me with a shopping cart in the grocery store and you're moving like a snail. Oh, but my client felt empowered enough to say that phrase. I'm excited to go to the grocery store, because that's what that boot camp gave her, is that freedom and knowing the knowledge and seeing past it now. And so client after client I've had come through, they all have similar stories. And that boot camp now has a global client base because of it. I just talked to another client the other day who had been through my boot camp a few months ago. He has gone on to lose another 15 to 20 pounds just off of that. So like I said, you got nothing to lose but those extra pounds. You got everything to gain. $97 for that. You guys, come on. That's a deal. So jump into that. Mandy's got the link, and I believe she's going to share that. And
yes, it's in the comments. Yeah, it's in the description above the live. So if you want the link, please do. If you need some help, please ask for it. None of us can do this on our own.
Exactly.
And I will say that's, one of the things that's helped me is me and my sister have been doing this together. We've kept each other going. We've changed our whole behavior around food, and it has helped. That's been a big help for me. But as I said at the start, for me, this was about sharing information with my audience because people asked me to. Sharing the knowledge, sharing the results that I've had, like I've shared my entire journey with you. I will continue to share the journey with you because I still would like to lose some more weight, but I'm in no rush to do that. If it takes me another couple of years to get the last few pounds off, then that's okay with me because it's a lifestyle. And I think if you can look at your whole life holistically and say, the change is big in everything I do, and what's important to me right now. And what was important to me right now was getting healthy and breaking the addiction and having a healthy life and enjoying it. And that's all any of us want, I suppose, isn't it? So thank you. If you've managed to stay to the end, well done. This is a lot longer than we expected, but you know, when you get on a roll, you've got to roll with it, haven't you? So thank you, Ken, for joining me tonight. And thank you for being here and talking so candidly about the things that you've discovered over the last, however, several years, and sharing that with us. I really appreciate you.
You're very, very welcome. It's been a pleasure to share. If you want to also further connect with me out there, so you can go to www.masteryweightloss.com/connect. You'll also see the link to my boot camp in that, but you'll see 3 other links in there. You will see one is a link to book a discovery call with me and maybe have some chance to ask some questions. That's free. You'll see a link to connect with me on my Facebook profile, and you will also see a link in there to go subscribe to my YouTube channel where I'm putting out content and stuff like that. So you've got plenty of ways you can discover and connect with me there as well. www.mastery, MASTER, Y, weightloss.com/connect. I got lost in my own head there for a second.
You got lost. It's okay. The link's in the description, Ken. So, and if you want to check out my YouTube, just go and have a look at my YouTube and have a look at my face on all of the videos and see where the weight loss started, because it's actually quite interesting. I was looking at it the other day and I was like, oh my goodness, you can see where the change is starting to happen. If I compare now my face to what it was this time last year, yeah, I look like a different person. So there's the proof in the pudding. So thank you all. Have an awesome night. I'm going out to walk my dogs now. So I hope that you all have amazing. Yes, I will see you all again. Bye for now. Thanks, Ken.